All right, so behind me we have my SL600. So it's a V12 Mercedes from 1998, and I absolutely love this car. Let's take a look at the engine bay and some things that we're gonna be doing shortly. Okay, here is the engine bay for my 1998 Mercedes-Benz SL600 V12. Look at that beast. It takes up the entire engine bay. So, overall, it's in pretty good condition. We have a brand new hood pad here. And overall, I think everything is pretty clean. I've checked some of the filters. It has hydraulic suspension, so there's hydraulic lines that run here and through to the suspension that we can see down here, hopefully. So you can see some of the suspension lines that run there. So we're gonna be cleaning all this up as part of the detailing process and making sure everything is as close to factory spec as possible and obviously as presentable as possible. I want this to be somewhat of a show car. I want people to look at it and see what it looked like when it was 1998. Showroom fresh. Now, there's a lot of criticisms about these big engines and the running costs of them. So part of this series is to say, okay, you have a V12 engine. How much is it actually going to cost you to run? How much is it going to cost you to maintain? So before this car, I had a 2004 C32 AMG, which was a V6 supercharged engine. It had about 375 horsepower, 375 pound-feet of torque. It was modified a little bit to get to those numbers, but it was a blast to drive. Now this, by comparison, has twice as many cylinders, but not quite as twice as much horsepower. So it has 390 horsepower and 420 foot-pounds of torque. Now, that's a lot for back in the day. Nowadays, it's a little bit kind of mediocre, I suppose, but you're not really buying an NA V12 car for the raw power. You're buying it for the smoothness, kind of the prestige. When you're driving it, it's just like a cloud, it's effortless. And with that effort, some people think, okay, it's gonna be really expensive to maintain. Now, some of the things, for example, like spark plugs. Everyone's saying, well, there's 12 spark plugs there. Yes, that's true. There are 12 spark plugs. But with the C32 AMG, Mercedes had something called twin spark, and that meant 2 spark plugs per cylinder. So that meant my V6 Mercedes had the same number of spark plugs as this SL. In terms of oil capacity, they were pretty similar. I forget exactly what this one is. It's about like 12 or 11 liters. And I think the V6 was about 9 or 10 or something. So I mean, when you buy 2 5-liter jugs of oil, you kind of just dump them both in, make sure everything's right on the dipstick, and go from there. So, general operating costs aren't that much different. The brakes aren't very expensive. They're not these AMG 2-piece rotors that cost, $1,000, $2,000 per corner. Or nowadays you have carbon ceramic brakes, which are absolutely insane to replace. So I'm hoping that as we dig through here, we'll see some of the parts that may need rejuvenation. And I'll go through the pricing as much as I can to show you that these classic Mercedes are not that expensive to upkeep in the grand scheme of car ownership today. It's more of a myth perpetuated by people who only go to the dealer to service their cars. Okay, so what is next on the Mercedes? So one of the things that happens on all high mileage cars and all old cars is that typically the valve covers leak. So the valve covers are right there. You can see them right underneath the intake. So these are the valve covers right here. As you can also see, because of the heat, the paint on them has started to crack. It's a little bit more noticeable here where it started to flake off. I guess the powder coating, not necessarily paint. So one of the things I'm going to be doing is rectifying that. I would like to powder coat those covers to again bring it to that original factory showroom condition. You can see that the intakes are in amazing condition. They are basically flawless. They might have been redone by the previous owner, but I'm not entirely sure. But I am getting some oil dripping on the floor, and I believe it's because the valve covers along here are leaking, and maybe a few bits of rubber and seals down here. So that means we're gonna have to take off the intakes here. We're gonna have to take off the intake on the other side, obviously. There's the throttle body that needs to come off. We need to unclip all of the coils, and we'll take a look at the spark plugs while I'm in there. Of course, the Mercedes center piece of plastic here has to come off to get to the wiring loom. You know, there's some neat tricks here, where if you just pull here, you can get to the power steering fluid and everything. So we're gonna be really dissecting a lot of this engine, going all the way down into the middle of the V, checking for any of the boots and sensors that are in there that might be from 1998. They could just use a little bit of TLC. We're also going to be looking at the suspension. So this is hydraulic suspension. Like I mentioned, you can see the inlet line here. So this one just kind of like clips out and you can unscrew it. And we're going to fix some of like the ripped boot here as well, right? And then there's a bumper stop up here that I'd like to replace. Other than that, the car is in really good condition. I have both wheels off and on jack stands with a couple of jack stands underneath that you can't see right at the moment. We're also going to be replacing the fuel filter in the back. I just like to have those nice and clean. And again, inspecting brake lines, brakes, and other just normal components. The interior, which we'll get to at a later video, is flawless. Everything looks great. It's a little bit dusty from being in here. And we might actually even change over the brake pads to a ceramic pad because the wheels, which are my nice monoblocks over here, yeah, they look great. They look great on the outside, but on the inside, they are really filthy with Mercedes black dust, okay? So that's about it for the engine. Okay, so as you can see, there's a lot to do on this car. It's going to be an involved project that's going to take me a few weeks of just going slow. One of the other things is that it's still quite cold here, and it's only about 10 degrees Celsius in the garage right now. So yes, I'm in a t-shirt, but I'm also Canadian, so I'm used to it. But the problem is if it dips kind of below that 10-degree mark, the plastic becomes too brittle to work on. One of the issues, again, with Mercedes from this era is that they have some brittle plastic, especially in the interior. It's not too bad, but I have seen some cracked pieces in here that I would like to be careful of because I don't believe you can replace a lot of those parts, especially on the V12. They're expensive and hard to come by for general plastic pieces, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna take you on the journey over the next few weeks or so. This will be just kind of randomly thrown out over the channel as we go in between reviews and other projects. You'll also see some of the products we use and review on this channel being used on this car, as well as some of the family haulers outside. So I hope you enjoy. Don't forget to like this video because I really need it to be thrown out into the world so more people can see this. I really appreciate you taking that 1 second to hit the like. And of course, feel free to subscribe. It costs you nothing. So subscribe to the channel for more interesting content about V12 Mercedes, detailing, and automotive product reviews. I'm Alex with Goldilocks Automotive. Thank you so much for watching.